I used to play in my mom's closet a lot when I was 5. I would throw a bandana over my head and go in her heels. My favorite were her thigh-high boots. But gender expression outside of the binary, hetero, cis-normative guideline was frowned upon in my household. It wasn't until I was in middle school that I actually came out to my mom and to her side of the family. I never questioned my gender identity in a detailed and thought-provoking way up until I was like 12. And even then, I think the fear of being shunned or outcasted by my family like pushed me into a whole separate closet than the one I had just escaped from. When I was 16, I started going to the Attic Youth Center in Philadelphia, which is an LGBT youth center in Philadelphia. I met so many different people who inspired me to explore my gender identity. That was the first time I heard about non-binary identities. I had heard of, people using they, them pronouns before, but no one ever really got into the trans umbrella and how non-binary can fall under it or be its own umbrella in and of itself. And then I transitioned. And I think every journey with gender identity and self-expression is different. Not putting pressure on myself to fit into a certain category or label at first definitely did help me along the way to fine-tune how I would directly identify. So I was openly out as gay in my high school pre-transition, and I transitioned during the pandemic in between my sophomore and junior year. My mom sent an email to the guidance counselor at the school as well as some of the administrative staff. And at the beginning of the school year, my guidance counselor reached out to me and asked me if I had wanted her to reach out and get workplace training on trans identities. And initially I was hesitant. I felt like that might be asking too much, or it might put me in a spot like that I don't necessarily want to be in. But they did have the workplace training, and I had come across some of my former teachers and they expressed support for me. And I went back to school my senior year in person, and I had this fear of being misgendered or dead named, and none of the teachers did, old and new. The biggest win that was a direct result of the workplace trainings being held at my high school had to be my ID. One day we had a substitute teacher, and she noticed on the attendance sheet that it had pictures of the students. So she pulled me aside in the beginning of class and was like, I don't mean to intrude, but I noticed this. And she pointed out the fact that my old photo and my dead name was on there. And she was like, are you uncomfortable with this? Do you want me to bring this up to someone in a position of power to change this for you? When the card was changed, it meant that I could be comfortable and I wouldn't have to worry about people seeing my dead name or an old photo of me pre-transition. It gave me peace of mind, most importantly, to see a photo that represented and reflected me, as well as the name that represented and reflected me. That was very important. I was the first openly trans person to attend my school. I was also the first Black trans woman to graduate from my high school with honors. Yay! Had to add that part in. I feel like it did kind of pave a way for someone else who did graduate a year after me. I feel like I made a small ripple in history. It might not be monumentous, but I think as long as it lives in my memory and it lives within the memory of others, I think it's very important. History doesn't always have to be a textbook. Shortly after I had graduated, I started a new job. There was a lot of turmoil going on within my personal life, and I utilized the Trevor Project's crisis hotline. I felt like I was at a very low point. I reached out and I had an hour-long conversation with someone who I didn't know before I made that call. I felt a lot better after talking through my headspace and expressing and navigating my ideation, and just knowing that someone cares, knowing that someone's there to talk. Pride in action to me means being proud of the steps that you take to create a better future, being proud of the decisions that you're making along the way and the changes that they can bring about, being proud of the fact that you're asking for help or you're asking for resources, or being proud of the fact that you're protesting, being proud of the fact that you're signing petitions. A small action is better than no action at all.